the standing, the most censored country is Eritrea. Number 2 on the list is North Korea. Number 3, Saudi Arabia. 4, Ethiopia. 6, Vietnam. 7, Iran. China. 8, 9, Myanmar. And 10, Cuba. And I feel like in America we talk about how China is so censored, and we always talk about that in schools and we use them as an example, but to think that they're number 8 on the list of most censored countries is kind of surprising to me, and that was something that I learned through this. I just always thought China and Russia was close to the top, and seeing that Russia's not even in the top 10 list was kind of surprising to me. So now we're going to go into censorship after we've talked a little bit about it. Just to start out with a definition, media censorship is a global phenomenon that has foreshadowed information outlets for centuries. A common ground for censorship is maintenance of an overlay state, whereas the underlying motive is to keep public ignorant of the information that can potentially threaten authorities. And that was stated by Iram Sahid Abbas and Laila Al-Sharqi in their article, Media Censorship, Freedom versus Responsibility. And they talk about journalism and their responsibility to give news to the public in the realist form, and versus what they're allowed to do versus what they should do, contrast. So just kind of how censorship came to be, and it's actually been a long, the first report is in 399 BC. So censorship's been around for a long time. There's different types, but we'll get into those in a minute. Historically, censorship has been used to monitor public morals, to control public awareness, and to silence opposition. So Socrates were one of the first victims of censorship who was sentenced to drink poison for his acknowledgement of unorthodox divinities in 399 BC. The original official censorship may be traced back to Rome, where in 443 BC the office of censor was first established. In 300 AD, China introduced its first censorship law. So for hundreds and hundreds of years, censorship has been in place in countries. Currently, in the United States, censorship, the suppression of word, images, ideas, are offensive, happens when some people succeed in imposing their personal, political, or moral values on others. So it's unconstitutional for the government to do censorship laws, but religious groups, corporate, military, and other groups, they will band together to make personal bans and attacks and try to influence other people to ban things that they find offensive or unmoral, sacrilegious, so on and so on. Worldwide, in the article Restore Democracy and Freedom of the Press Under Capitalism, again by Dr. Unsuk, S.A., stated the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization tried to develop a new international information order in the 1970s. This idea was to try to give the third world countries some sort of input into the international media system, instead of having it totally monopolized by a few rich Western powers, America primarily. However, America strongly attacked the idea and cut its funds. America has wanted to increase its influence via the media in the third world. We often ignore a voice that expresses the position of the clear majority of the world's population, at least to some extent, whereas we insist on the information system that is under control of the rich and powerful and works for the interests. So that's kind of the situation in the other world, in third world countries, when countries that have more money will buy out pretty much the opinions of smaller countries that would rather take the money, the journalists, and people that have more power. So that's kind of why we're still seeing this fight of freedom of the press. It's all about power, and how Western countries, primarily America, Germany, and other countries that have high power, they want to buy out countries pretty much to just get their opinion across. It's pretty much a power thing. Types of censorship include corporate, military, moral, religious, and political. Political is a big one. A case study I wanted to share is the Brazil case study of the town of Tehuco in the state of Minas Gerais. So until Fabio Olivia arrived, which was a journalist who actually helped bring light to the situation, 600 inhabitants of the small town of Tehuco who didn't agree with the governing political party were not allowed to the water source for a 8-month dry season. Instead, they would have to walk daily to the next water source, which is 14 kilometers. In 2010, when Olivia Kame published an article in Tugo describing how local officials had co-opted public money meant for delivering thousands of meters of water pipes and instead built wells in their own properties and spent the remaining funds on buying vehicles and livestock. Following Livia's publication, the public prosecutor began to investigate all irregularities in town. So pretty much the government and Brazil got caught for, instead of giving money to these smaller towns that needed water, they were buying things for themselves and then keeping it censored, not letting anybody know until it was brought to light. So that's kind of one of the good things of journalism that needs to be kept, is exposing when things aren't being right. And so how censorship affects freedom of the press. In North Korea, 9.7% of the population has cell phones, a number that excludes access to phones smuggled in from China. In place of the global internet, to which only a select powerful individuals have access, some schools and others institutions have access to tightly controlled internet. And despite the arrival of Associated Press Bureau in 2012, the state has such a tight grip on the news agendas that newsreels are re-edited to remove Kim Jong-un's disgraced uncle from the archives after his execution. So they even have the power to remove people. So I just wanted to talk about some issues where people online on debate.org actually, just common people think about whether censorship is good or bad. And to start out, one of the arguments I found compelling was someone who voted 36% said yes, while 64% said no, that censorship was bad. So for the argument for censorship, it says yes, some censorship is needed. Yes, I believe that some censorship is always needed. If nothing is censored, who knows some of the things that will be pumped out of the radio, television, news, etc. All people are not able to self-regulate, and this can pose a problem when a mixed crowd is being addressed. Censorship should be excessive, but it should not be excessive, but it should always be around. And then an argument against it is no, censorship is usually a bad idea. There are times when perhaps a piece of literature or a song that advocates violence against a particular group needs to be banned or at least confined, but most of the time we are better off allowing freedom of speech instead of censoring it because the censorship usually backfires eventually. One part where censorship wasn't in place was in the Vietnam War, where instead of censoring military news, so instead of releasing it the day that it came in, the reporter, maybe waiting a few weeks so that the enemy wouldn't know what we were up to, they actually just didn't allow reporters into the Vietnam War. And so now when we're looking back decades later, we're trying to put together documentaries and understand what happened wrong in the Vietnam War and how we can make that better. It's really hard for us to do so because of the information that was lost. An actual reporter during the Vietnam War stated, "Today we have no independent film of the 1991 Persian Gulf War. The Persian Gulf War. None because our correspondents, our film crews were not permitted to go out on the front with the troops. They should have been. The tape was shot, should have been sent back to censorship. If it couldn't have been released immediately, it would be held for eventual release and for history. We don't have that history now. The history is lost to us. It's a crime against democracy." So in ending, I just want to say that to have freedom of the press, you need democracy, and you need to have that power. And I know it's hard for, it's basically a human right that's needed. And the problems we're still having today is because smaller countries and countries that aren't fully developed are overpowered by countries that do have that power. And so things that we can do is American citizens journalism about those things, going to countries and sometimes secretly having to do that. Prospects, as well as people being concerned about how Donald Trump is going to be taking away freedom of the press, is something that people are concerned about. I personally don't think that that will ever happen because it is such a big part of what America is free press and free freedom of speech. But it'll be interesting to see how that will happen as we go forward in this term. So that is what I have to say about freedom of the press, and thanks for watching. Bye.